My face is so scary, said alien vampire Queen No. You are the most beautiful in the galaxy, I said. His ship, a small human scout vessel, moved steadily through the blackness of a distant system at the edge of known space. Ethan liked exploring. He liked the unknown. It was not the first time humans had gone far into the galaxy, but he still felt a rush every time he entered uncharted space. This time he had a special mission: to investigate a planet that scanners had picked up as strange, dark, and full of energy unlike anything humans had seen. The planet was cold and looked dead from space. Its surface was black and jagged, with tall cliffs that seemed to rise into the sky like dark towers. But what drew Ethan's attention was not the planet itself. Floating above the ground, there was a huge castle. It was massive, with spires and walls that glowed faintly in the darkness. The scanners showed that the castle was alive with movement. Strange ships and creatures floated around it, moving in ways humans had never built. Ethan's heart beat faster. He had seen alien structures before, but nothing like this. He opened the ship's communication channel. "This is Captain Ethan Clark of the Star Voyager. I am requesting permission to approach the structure," he said. There was no reply, not even a signal. That was normal. Many alien species did not want to talk to humans at first, but Ethan was not afraid. He adjusted the ship's engines and moved closer to the castle, scanning it carefully. As he got closer, he could see details that scanners could not pick up. The castle was covered in shadows that seemed to move on their own. The spires were not smooth. They were carved with strange shapes and symbols that seemed alive. At first, Ethan felt a shiver of fear, but he quickly reminded himself that fear was not helpful. Humans were explorers. Humans faced danger every day. A sudden flash of light came from one of the castle towers. Ethan squinted and focused his sensors. The light formed a figure. It was humanoid, but taller and thinner than any human. Its skin was pale, almost white, and its eyes shone red like glowing gems. Its hair was black and fell straight to its shoulders. Two sharp fangs were visible when it opened its mouth. Ethan froze for a moment. This was the vampire Queen Lyra, the ruler of this dark place. Many humans had heard stories about her species from old space legends. They said her kind were dangerous, powerful, and could strike fear into the bravest warriors, but Ethan did not feel fear. He felt curiosity. He wanted to know more. He activated the ship's external speaker. "I am Captain Ethan Clark. I come in peace. I wish to meet you." The figure on the tower stared at him for a long moment. Then, in a voice both soft and cold, it spoke. "You are very brave to approach me, human, but you must know I am not friendly." Ethan smiled. "I understand, but I am not here to fight. I want to learn about you." The vampire queen tilted her head. "Learn about me? You humans are so small, so fragile. Why would you want to learn about someone like me?" "Because," Ethan said calmly, "sometimes strength is not in size. Sometimes strength is in courage and understanding. I want to see the galaxy with open eyes, not closed fear." There was silence. Then the queen's lips curved into something like a smile, but it was faint and uncertain. "Very well, you may land, but know this, human. My face is so scary, most beings flee at first sight. They scream or attack. You do not." Ethan laughed softly. "Then I must be honest. I do not see your face as scary. I see it as beautiful. There is power and elegance in the way you look." The queen's eyes widened slightly. No one had ever said that to her, not even her own kind. For centuries, creatures had approached her with fear or hatred. To hear something different from a human, it was strange and new. "Beautiful," she whispered. "You do not lie." "I do not lie," Ethan said firmly. "I speak what I see, and I have seen many stars, many worlds, many creatures, but you are unlike anything I have ever seen." There was a pause, long and quiet. Then, slowly, the queen descended from the tower and stood before Ethan's ship. She moved like a shadow, silent and smooth. Ethan stepped out of the ship to meet her. Lyra stopped a few feet away. She looked at him with her glowing red eyes. "No human has ever come so close," she said, "and no human has ever spoken so kindly." "I do not judge by appearances," Ethan said. "I judge by actions and words, and so far your actions have protected your people and your home. That shows courage." Her lips moved slightly. "Few beings understand that. Most fear only what they see. And I have learned to fear myself." Ethan tilted his head. "Why would you fear yourself?" "My face," she said softly. "It is not like other beings. It is sharp, cold, and frightening. I have lived for centuries, and still I feel that no one can truly see me beyond the fear." Ethan took a step closer, careful not to alarm her. I see you, he said. I see the strength and the grace. I see the loneliness that has made you cautious. And I see someone who deserves respect and admiration, not fear. Lyra's expression changed just slightly. She had never felt seen like this before. Most beings looked at her and only saw fangs, pale skin, and glowing eyes, but Ethan looked deeper. And that was new. You speak boldly, human, she said. Do you know what this means? To challenge the fear I have built around me for centuries. I do, Ethan said. And I do not fear it. I know that strength often comes from what others fear, and I believe humans and you, we can learn from each other. For the first time in centuries, Lyra felt a small spark of hope. Not the usual curiosity or suspicion, but hope. Maybe there was more to humans than she thought. Maybe bravery was not only about fighting, but about trust and honesty. Come, she said finally. I will show you my home, but be warned, human, it is not easy to walk in a place like mine. Many things here will try to scare you. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Ethan nodded. I am certain. Lyra gestured, and a shadowy path opened before them. Strange creatures moved silently around the halls. Some had wings, others had long tails, and all had eyes that glowed faintly. Ethan noticed them but did not flinch. He greeted them respectfully, and surprisingly, they did not attack. Lyra's presence seemed to calm them. As they walked, Lyra spoke softly. It is strange. You are not afraid. Most beings flee or strike, and yet you smile, you speak kindly. I do not understand it. Ethan shrugged lightly. Humans have a saying, courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. Fear is natural, but it does not have to control us. Lyra considered this. For centuries, she had relied on fear to protect herself. She had believed that fear was the only way to command respect. But Ethan's words were different. They were simple, yet powerful. They reached a large hall, with ceilings so high that they disappeared into darkness. Strange plants floated in midair, glowing softly. Ethan marveled at the beauty. This is incredible, he said. Lyra nodded. Few beings have seen it. Most are too terrified to enter. Ethan looked at her. And yet you are here showing it to me. That means you trust me. I am not sure I trust yet, she admitted. But you are different. There is something in you that makes me feel safe. Ethan smiled. Then let us start with that. We can learn from each other and perhaps help each other understand this vast galaxy a little better. Lyra studied him, her glowing eyes scanning every movement, every expression. She had lived for centuries, ruling her people with strength and fear. And now a human, small, fragile by all standards, stood before her, unafraid, speaking with honesty and warmth. It was fascinating. As the hall's lights shimmered around them, Lyra finally spoke, a small hint of a smile on her lips. You are not what I expected. Perhaps humans are more than I thought. Ethan nodded. We are many things, and I think together we might discover even more. For the first time in her long life, Lyra did not feel the sharp sting of fear or the weight of isolation. She felt curiosity and perhaps something even more powerful, hope. And so, in the dark heart of a distant system, a human and a vampire queen began a story neither could have imagined. A story of trust, courage, and the strange beauty of seeing someone as they truly were. The inside of the vampire queen Lyra's castle was more magnificent than Ethan had ever imagined. Shadows twisted along the walls, but they were not frightening. Instead, they seemed alive, moving in patterns that felt almost like a dance. Strange lights floated above the floor, glowing softly like tiny stars. The hallways were vast and high, so tall that Ethan could barely see the ceilings. Floating plants drifted in midair, glowing in colors he had never seen before. Some plants hummed softly, like they were alive in ways humans could not understand. Lyra walked gracefully ahead of him, her pale skin glowing faintly in the strange light. Ethan tried not to stare too much at her face, but he could not help noticing how her red eyes glimmered and how her black hair moved in the faint air currents of the castle. There was a power in her presence, but also a certain loneliness he could sense. You may notice, Lyra said after a while, that many creatures live here. They obey me, yes, but they are not like pets. They are extensions of my will. Ethan nodded, keeping his voice calm and friendly. They seem very connected to you. It must take a lot of skill to manage a place like this. Lyra's lips curved slightly, a hint of pride in her expression. It does, and yet many fear me for it. They do not understand. They see my appearance and they assume my heart is cruel, but it is not. I protect my people even if they do not always understand me. Ethan smiled. That is honorable, and I think it takes more courage to lead with protection than to lead with fear. Lyra looked at him in surprise. Most beings would not say that. They would mock or flee or challenge me, but you do not. You see what is behind the face. I try, Ethan said simply. I have learned that appearances are often only the surface. True strength is in actions and choices, not in how someone looks. For a long while they walked through winding corridors. Strange creatures moved around them, but none threatened him. Some looked like shadows with wings, others had long, thin bodies and glowing eyes. Ethan greeted them politely, and Lyra corrected him when he mispronounced a few names. She seemed amused at his mistakes, though she did not show it openly. Finally, they reached a large hall. It was shaped like a circle with platforms floating at different heights. Ethan could see that each platform had a strange mechanism or puzzle built into it. The entire hall felt alive, like a test designed to challenge anyone who entered. "This is my trial hall," Lyra said. "It is not often that anyone enters here willingly. Most beings flee at the first obstacle. Some die trying to understand it. I must warn you, human, it is not a place for the faint of heart." Ethan looked around, curiosity lighting up his face. "A trial? What kind of trial?" Lyra paused, her eyes glimmering. "It is a test of courage, intelligence, and adaptability. It is how I know if someone is worthy of trust. Many try, few succeed. You may pass, or you may fail." Ethan laughed softly. "Then I accept the challenge. Humans are used to solving problems, and I do not give up easily." Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, then let us begin." The first platform had a strange pattern on the floor, glowing lines that formed a complex maze. Ethan studied it carefully. He realized that stepping on the wrong line would trigger a trap, sudden energy pulses, or sometimes a spike that shot up from the floor. His heart raced, but he kept his focus. He observed the pattern, traced it with his eyes, and slowly started stepping. Lyra followed silently, watching him carefully. "You are cautious but confident. That is good. Many humans panic at this stage, many aliens as well," Ethan smiled. "I prefer observation before action. That way mistakes are fewer." The maze was long and difficult, with parts that moved and changed as he walked. Ethan slipped once, almost triggering a trap, but he managed to recover just in time. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, not with anger, but with surprise. Few beings had ever managed to pass the first part of the trial hall without injury. "You are clever," she said. "Very few pass this without harm." Ethan shrugged. "I have had practice. Humans adapt quickly when survival is at stake." The second platform was different. It had a series of levers and buttons. When pressed in the wrong order, a wall would descend and trap the person inside for hours. Ethan realized it was a puzzle that required memory and logic. He observed carefully, testing small parts without fully triggering the traps. Slowly, he learned the correct sequence and pressed the final lever. The wall retracted, opening the path forward. Lyra nodded approvingly. "You have patience. Most beings grow frustrated and make careless mistakes. You do not." Ethan felt a quiet sense of pride. He had passed the first two challenges, and he could sense that Lyra was starting to respect him more. Not just for his bravery, but for his intelligence and careful thinking. The third platform was the hardest. It appeared empty, but in reality it was filled with illusions. Ghostly figures appeared suddenly, moving toward him. Some looked like fierce monsters, others like frightened creatures pleading for help. Ethan realized that these were tests of fear and empathy. If he panicked or harmed them without thought, he would fail. He took a deep breath and focused. He did not attack the figures. He observed them carefully, noticing patterns in their movements. Slowly, he navigated through the illusions, avoiding the traps they hid. When he finally reached the end of the platform, Lyra's voice echoed softly. "You did not flinch, you did not strike blindly, you saw clearly. That is rare." Ethan smiled, slightly tired but proud. "Fear can teach if you let it, but it should not control you." Lyra's eyes softened just a little. "You are unlike any being I have known. Humans are said to be fragile, weak, and reckless, and yet, here you are, passing tests that my kind has designed to challenge the strongest among us." Ethan shook his head. "We are not perfect, but humans learn quickly. We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we do things that seem impossible to others." The final platform was a wide chamber filled with a strange mist that glowed faintly in the dark. Shapes moved within the mist, impossible to see clearly. Ethan could sense danger, but he also sensed something familiar. The mist seemed to respond to his thoughts. He realized that this was a test of perception and trust. He closed his eyes briefly, relying on his instincts. He moved slowly, feeling the way forward with careful steps. The shapes in the mist shifted around him but did not touch him. He focused on the quiet strength inside him, the human ability to think, to feel, and to remain calm under pressure. When he reached the end of the chamber, Lyra stepped forward, her face showing a rare expression, admiration. "You have passed all of the trials," she said softly. "Few beings in history have done so. You are remarkable human." Ethan nodded, slightly out of breath but smiling. "It was not easy, but it was worth it. And I learned a lot about this place and about you." Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "You have courage, yes, intelligence, yes, but more than that, you have something most beings do not. You have respect. You see beings for who they are, not for the fear they inspire. That is rare." Ethan smiled gently. "It is what humans try to do. We have our fears, but we also have hope and the ability to see beyond appearances." Lyra considered this. For centuries, she had relied on fear to protect herself. She had believed that no one could understand her, that her appearance was too terrifying for any being to approach. And now a human, a small, fragile creature, had not only survived her trials but had impressed her deeply. "You are extraordinary," she whispered. "I have never met anyone like you, Ethan Clark, and yet here you are walking beside me as though it is normal." Ethan shrugged lightly. "It is not normal, maybe, but it is real, and I believe there is value in understanding, even when it is difficult or strange." Lyra's expression softened further. For the first time, she felt a connection to another being that was not based on fear or power. She felt respect, curiosity, and perhaps even something stronger, something she had not felt in centuries. "You have passed the trials," she said again, "but more importantly, you have passed the test of my judgment. I can see that you are sincere, human. That is rare in this galaxy." Ethan nodded. "I try to be sincere. And I believe that sincerity is more powerful than fear or intimidation. Sometimes it can achieve things that force and power cannot." Lyra studied him for a long moment, then she finally nodded. "Very well, you have earned my trust, and perhaps something more. You are different, Ethan Clark, and I am curious to see where this difference will lead us." Ethan smiled, feeling a quiet sense of triumph, not just for surviving the trials, but for earning the trust and respect of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And he knew, deep inside, that this was only the beginning of a story that would change both their lives forever. After passing the trials, Ethan and Lyra spent several hours exploring more of the castle. Ethan was fascinated by the floating gardens, glowing plants, and strange creatures that moved silently through the halls. Lyra, though usually quiet and reserved, began to speak more openly. She told him about the history of her people and the dangers they had faced over centuries. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions, always showing respect and curiosity rather than fear. It was during one of these conversations that Lyra paused and looked out of a tall window. The stars were bright, but far in the distance, Ethan noticed a group of ships approaching. Unlike the calm patrols around the castle, these ships moved aggressively in tight formation with sharp angles that looked menacing even from this distance. "What are those?" Ethan asked. His voice was steady, but he felt a spike of tension in his chest. Lyra's eyes darkened. "That is the Draxer fleet," she said quietly. "They have been hunting my people for generations. They wish to enslave us, take control of this system, and destroy anyone who resists. And now they have come." Ethan frowned. "How many ships?" Lyra counted silently with her glowing eyes. "At least 500, she said, "and their weaponry is advanced. Even my best forces may not hold them alone." Ethan felt a surge of determination. "Then we need a plan. You don't have to face this alone." Lyra shook her head. "Humans, you do not understand. The Draxer fleet is enormous. They do not negotiate. They do not fear weakness. If I face them with even a single human, they will see you as a target and kill you instantly." Ethan stepped closer, meeting her gaze. "I understand the risk. But humans are not weak. We are clever, adaptable, and willing to do what it takes, and I can help you fight them in ways that are unexpected." Lyra studied him, her red eyes narrowing. "Humans are said to be reckless, to act without thinking. How can I trust that you will survive?" "I may be reckless sometimes," Ethan admitted, "but I learn quickly, I adapt, and I think differently than most beings. That can be useful when facing enemies like the Draxer." Lyra seemed to consider this. After a long silence, she finally said, "Very well, I will allow you to assist me, but know this, Ethan Clark, if you fail, there will be no mercy." "I understand," Ethan said firmly. "I will not fail." They began planning immediately. Lyra called her lieutenants, creatures of many shapes and sizes, and instructed them to gather information about the incoming fleet. Ethan observed their strategies, noticing patterns and weaknesses. He suggested several tactics that were unusual for Lyra's kind: traps using the environment, decoys to confuse the enemy, and coordinated strikes that relied on timing rather than brute strength. Lyra was skeptical at first. "These tactics are strange. They rely on speed, deception, and patience. My kind prefers direct power. Why do you think this will work?" Ethan smiled. "Because humans have won battles where we were outnumbered, outgunned, and underestimated. Sometimes thinking differently is stronger than fighting harder." For hours, they worked together, refining the plan. Lyra began to see the truth in his words. Ethan's ideas were unconventional, but they had a certain logic that complemented her raw power. Slowly, she began to trust him more, allowing him to take a leading role in the preparation for battle. As night fell over the dark planet, the Draxar fleet came into view. Thousands of sharp lights glimmered in the distance, moving like a swarm. The creatures in Lyra's castle grew tense, but Ethan remained calm. He climbed onto a high platform overlooking the landing zone and observed carefully. "They are moving faster than I expected," he said, "but their formation is rigid. They do not adapt quickly." "That can be used against them." Lyra nodded. "You may be right. What do you propose?" Ethan outlined a plan. Small groups of Lyra's warriors would act as decoys, drawing the enemy into traps. Hidden energy fields would disrupt the fleet's movement. Then, coordinated attacks from unexpected angles would break their formation. It was a risky plan, but Ethan's confidence was contagious. Lyra agreed to follow it, trusting his judgment despite the danger. The first wave of Draxar ships approached the castle. Their weapons glowed bright, and their engines roared through space. Ethan activated the decoy systems, sending holographic images of Lyra's ships in patterns that made the enemy unsure of the real positions. Lyra's warriors struck with precision, drawing the Draxar into the traps Ethan had designed. The battle began in earnest. Ethan moved quickly, directing forces, adjusting tactics in real time, and staying calm under pressure. The Draxar were powerful, but they were predictable. By exploiting their patterns and weaknesses, Ethan and Lyra's forces began to turn the tide. Lyra herself was a terrifying presence on the battlefield. Her wings spread wide, her eyes glowing red as she struck with precision and power. But she followed Ethan's guidance, using strategy as well as strength. The combination was deadly. During a critical moment, a large group of Draxar ships attempted to flank Lyra's castle. Ethan quickly adjusted the plan, ordering hidden energy fields to rise and block the flanking ships. Several were destroyed instantly, while others were forced back into the main formation. Lyra glanced at Ethan, a rare expression of surprise on her face. "You are impressive, human. I did not expect you to react so quickly." Ethan smiled, not taking his eyes off the battlefield. "Humans survive by thinking on our feet, and we never underestimate an enemy." The battle raged on for hours. Lyra's warriors fought fiercely, inspired by her presence and Ethan's guidance. The Draxar, confident at first, grew frustrated as their attacks failed again and again. They could not understand how a human and one scary queen could outsmart them. Finally, after a long struggle, the Draxar fleet began to retreat. Their ships moved in disarray, damaged and demoralized. Ethan directed a final strike, cutting off their retreat and forcing the remaining forces to surrender. The battlefield was silent except for the hum of engines and the occasional cheer from Lyra's warriors. Lyra landed near Ethan, her chest heaving slightly from exertion. I have never seen anything like this," she said. "My people have faced many enemies, but none like this." "You humans, you are capable of incredible things," Ethan nodded. "We are not invincible, but we can be clever, adaptable, and brave, and sometimes that is enough to change the course of a battle." Lyra looked at him closely. "I see now you were not lying when you said humans are strong, not just in body, but in mind and spirit. I underestimated your kind. I am grateful that you were here, Ethan Clark." Ethan smiled. "And I am grateful that you trusted me." Not many would allow a human to help them in a battle like this. For the first time in her long life, Lyra allowed herself to feel something other than fear or suspicion. She felt respect, trust, and even something like friendship. The idea that a human could be her ally, and perhaps more, was both strange and comforting. The survivors of the Draxer fleet were taken prisoner. Lyra's forces celebrated cautiously, knowing that while the threat was diminished, the galaxy remained full of dangers. Ethan walked beside Lyra, observing the aftermath of the battle. "You see now," he said softly, "that humans are not weak. We survive, we adapt, and we can accomplish things that seem impossible." Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, and I see that appearances are not everything. You humans, you judge not by fear but by action. That is rare, that is powerful." Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and sincere. "And you, Lyra, are not what most beings think. You are not just terrifying. You are strong, intelligent, and capable of great care and leadership. That is beauty in its own way." Lyra's eyes softened, the glow fading slightly. "No one has ever said that to me before, not ever. My face, my presence, most beings see only danger, only horror. But you see beyond it. That is new." Ethan smiled gently. "Sometimes seeing beyond is all it takes. Sometimes it changes everything." Lyra nodded, looking out at the stars where the Draxer fleet had once advanced. She felt a mixture of relief and amazement. For centuries, she had relied on fear to survive, believing that strength meant terror. Now she understood that strength could come from trust, courage, and partnership. "You have changed something in me," she said quietly, "and perhaps in my people as well. We will need to rebuild and prepare, but with your help, the galaxy will see a new side of us." Ethan placed a hand lightly on her arm. "And we will face it together. Humans and your people can achieve things that no one alone could." Lyra looked at him, her expression softening further. For the first time in centuries, she felt hope, trust, and something like admiration for the small, brave human who had walked into her castle and changed everything. And so, in the heart of a distant system, after a battle that had seemed impossible to win, a human and a vampire queen began to understand each other. They had faced danger, adapted, and succeeded together. And both knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would change their lives, and perhaps the galaxy, forever. After the battle with the Draxer fleet, the castle was quiet. The dark halls were filled with soft hums of machinery and the distant flutter of wings. Ethan walked beside Lyra, observing the aftermath. Her people were busy repairing ships, tending to the wounded, and reorganizing the defenses. Despite the danger that had just passed, Ethan noticed a strange sense of calm in Lyra's presence. She was strong but also thoughtful, almost human in her consideration of her people. "You handled the battle well," Lyra said quietly. Her glowing red eyes studied him. "Better than I could have imagined. Even my best commanders would have struggled as you did." Ethan smiled, shaking his head slightly. "I didn't do it alone. Your warriors were skilled and your leadership is powerful. I just helped guide the strategy." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. "You have something rare among humans. Not just courage or cleverness, but patience. Calm, most beings panic under pressure. You adapt." Ethan shrugged. "We learn quickly. Humans survive by thinking, not just fighting. We adapt because we must." Lyra nodded slowly, considering his words. "I see that now. And I see that you are different from the humans I have heard about. Perhaps humans are more than I believed." They walked through a hall filled with glowing plants that drifted in midair. Ethan noticed that even in the midst of tension and danger, Lyra moved with grace. She had been a warrior for centuries, yet there was something almost delicate in the way she handled her people. "You have been a ruler for so long," Ethan said gently. "Do you ever feel alone?" Lyra paused, her eyes softening. "Always, leadership is a heavy burden. My people fear me, respect me, but do not understand me. I am isolated by what I am." Ethan looked at her carefully. "Isolation is hard, but it can be less frightening if someone sees you for who you truly are, not just your face, your power, but you." Lyra's glowing eyes met his, and she felt a strange warmth. No one had ever said that to her. No one had ever looked at her face and spoken kindness instead of fear. She felt something she had not felt in centuries, trust. "I do not know how to respond to that," she whispered. "Most beings see only the danger, and yet you do not." Ethan smiled softly. "I see beyond appearances. I see what is real, and what I see is strength, intelligence, and beauty." Lyra blinked, slightly startled. "Beauty?" "Yes," Ethan said simply. "You have a presence that commands respect, intelligence that surpasses most beings, and a heart that protects those around you. That is beauty." For a moment, Lyra felt unsure. She had lived for centuries believing that her face was a curse, that her presence inspired only fear. And now a human, a small, fragile creature, was telling her something entirely different. "You speak boldly," she said softly. "Few beings would dare to speak so openly." Ethan shrugged. "I speak honestly. It is easier to work together when we trust each other." "And I want to trust you," Lyra nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right. Trust is powerful. I have relied on fear for so long, I have forgotten what it is to rely on trust." Ethan smiled. "Then let's start now, trust each other, and we can face whatever comes next." Just then, an alarm sounded in the castle. A series of glowing panels lit up, showing that a new threat was approaching. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly to the control room. Screens displayed a fleet of ships moving through the system, but these ships were different. They were smaller than the Draxer fleet, faster and more agile. Their engines left trails of bright energy, and their weapons glowed with a dangerous intensity. "What is this?" Lyra asked, her voice tense. "I am not sure," Ethan said, studying the readings. "They move differently than the Draxer. They are faster, more precise, but they seem fewer in number. Perhaps we can use that against them." Lyra frowned. "Fewer, yes, but cunning. We cannot underestimate them. They may have studied the Draxer battle. They may know our tactics." Ethan nodded. "Then we will need to adapt, again." Lyra considered him carefully. "You are a remarkable human. Most beings would panic or hide, and yet you remain calm. That is rare." "It is necessary," Ethan said simply. "Fear can guide you, but it should not control you." "And we cannot let fear control us now." Lyra's eyes softened. For centuries, she had relied on fear to control her surroundings, to protect herself and her people. But now, standing beside a human who faced danger without panic, she felt something different. She felt possibility. They quickly organized a defense. Ethan suggested using the castle's energy fields in new ways, creating barriers that could confuse and trap the incoming fleet. Lyra's warriors moved swiftly, following his directions and combining their strength with his strategy. The battle began in space above the castle. The new fleet attacked with speed and precision, trying to exploit any weakness. Ethan and Lyra coordinated the defense, using a combination of strategy, traps, and unexpected strikes. The alien ships moved quickly, but Ethan's human intuition predicted their movements. He directed Lyra's warriors to intercept at the right moments, creating openings for counterattacks. Lyra herself was a storm in the sky. Her wings spread wide and her eyes glowed with intensity. She struck at the enemy with precision, using both strength and strategy. But she also listened to Ethan's guidance, learning to combine her power with clever tactics. For hours, the battle raged. The small fleet was relentless, but they were also predictable. Ethan noticed patterns in their attacks and used them to create traps. Several ships were destroyed when they followed decoys into energy fields, while others collided when forced into tight formations. Lyra glanced at him during a brief pause. "You are incredible, human. I did not expect you to manage this so well." Ethan smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. "I told you humans adapt, and we think differently. That can be powerful when combined with your strength." The enemy fleet began to weaken. Their formations broke, and their ships were damaged or destroyed. Ethan guided Lyra in a final maneuver, coordinating a strike that trapped the remaining ships in a confined area. Unable to escape, they were forced to surrender. The battle was over. Silence returned to the space around the castle, broken only by the hum of engines and the cheers of Lyra's people. Ethan and Lyra floated above the battlefield, looking at the remnants of the defeated fleet. "You were right," Lyra said quietly. "Thinking differently can be stronger than pure power. Humans, you are remarkable." Ethan smiled gently. "We are not perfect, but we survive, we adapt, and sometimes that is enough to succeed." Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. "You have changed something in me, Ethan Clark. I have relied on fear for centuries, but now I see that strength can come from trust, courage, and partnership. That is new." Ethan nodded. "It is new for many beings, but sometimes the new ways are better ways. And together we can face anything." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. For the first time in centuries, she felt hope. Not the cautious hope that leaders often feel, but a genuine, quiet hope. A hope that came from trust and understanding, from seeing someone not as a weapon or a threat, but as a partner. "You are extraordinary," she whispered. "Not just in battle, but in spirit. I have never met anyone like you, Ethan Clark, and yet here you are." Ethan smiled softly. And I am grateful that you trusted me and that we could face this together. Humans and your people, we are stronger together than alone. Lyra nodded, looking out at the stars where the enemy fleet had been. Yes, together, that is powerful. And perhaps beautiful. Ethan placed a hand lightly on her arm. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from power alone, but from trust, courage, and understanding, and I believe we have that now. Lyra looked at him, her expression filled with something she had not felt in centuries, admiration, trust, and a quiet joy. For the first time, she did not feel the sharp weight of fear or the isolation of her power. She felt connection. And in that moment, high above the dark planet, Ethan and Lyra understood something that would guide them for the rest of their journey. Humans were not just small or fragile. They were clever, brave, and capable of remarkable deeds. And sometimes a human could change even the heart of a vampire queen. The battle was over, but the story was far from finished. New challenges would come, new threats would appear, and the galaxy was vast and dangerous. But for now, they had survived. They had won. And they had discovered something even more powerful than any weapon, the strength of trust, partnership, and courage. As the stars shimmered above, Ethan and Lyra floated silently, side by side. Neither spoke for a long time. Words were not needed. They had faced danger together, they had survived, and they had begun a bond that would shape the future. In the heart of a distant system, amid the ruins of a defeated enemy, a human and a vampire queen began to understand each other fully. And both knew that together they could face whatever the galaxy had in store. The calm after the battle was brief. Ethan, Clark, and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the dark planet below. The Draxer fleet had been defeated, and the small fleet that had attacked afterward had been sent fleeing. Yet Ethan knew the galaxy was vast, full of dangers they had not yet seen. Lyra remained quiet for a moment, her glowing red eyes scanning the horizon. "I have ruled for centuries," she said softly, "and I have always believed that fear is the strongest weapon, but now I see that there is another way, one that does not depend on terror but on trust and understanding." Ethan nodded. "Humans know that well. Fear can guide, but it should not control. Courage, intelligence, and cooperation, these are stronger than any weapon." Lyra turned to him, her eyes softening. "You have taught me much, human, and not just in battle. You have shown me that strength is not only power, but also patience, respect, and trust. I did not think a human could teach me this." Ethan smiled gently. "Then perhaps humans are not so small and fragile after all. We are not invincible, but we can do incredible things when we act together." The quiet was broken by a distant alarm. Ethan and Lyra rushed to the control room, where a new threat had appeared. On the scanners, a fleet of alien ships approached rapidly. Their design was strange and unfamiliar, with sleek curves and glowing energy shields. This fleet seemed more organized, more strategic, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced before. Lyra's expression hardened. "Another enemy, after all we have faced." Ethan studied the fleet carefully. "Yes, but this time we are ready, we know what to expect, and we can adapt. Humans survive by thinking differently, and I believe we can use that advantage." Lyra considered his words. "I have learned to trust you, Ethan Clark. Very few beings have earned that. Perhaps, together, we can face this threat." Ethan smiled. "We will, and we will win not just with strength, but with strategy and understanding." The fleet approached the planet's orbit. Ethan quickly analyzed their movement patterns. "They are fast and coordinated, but their formation is predictable. If we use decoys and traps, we can force them into positions where they are vulnerable." Lyra nodded. "Then let us prepare. My warriors will follow your guidance. I will fight as I always have, but with your strategy, we may succeed." Together, they began to organize the defenses. Ethan instructed the castle's forces to use energy barriers in new ways, creating zones that could trap and confuse the incoming fleet. He set decoys in orbit, holographic images of ships that would draw the enemy into ambushes. Lyra deployed her warriors in coordinated formations, striking at key points and using her own power to disrupt the enemy's movements. When the fleet finally arrived, the battle began. Energy weapons lit the sky, and the sound of engines filled the air. Ethan directed the defense with calm authority, predicting the fleet's movements and adjusting tactics in real time. Lyra fought beside him, her wings spreading wide, her eyes glowing red with intensity. She struck with precision, destroying enemy ships with devastating force. The battle was fierce. The enemy fleet was skilled, but they were not prepared for Ethan's strategies. Holographic decoys led groups of ships into energy traps, while Lyra's warriors attacked from unexpected angles. The enemy's shields were strong, but the combined efforts of human ingenuity and Lyra's power slowly wore them down. During a critical moment, a group of enemy ships tried to flank the castle from above. Ethan quickly adjusted the defenses, opening hidden energy barriers and redirecting Lyra's warriors to intercept them. The enemy ships collided with the barriers and several were destroyed instantly. Lyra glanced at Ethan, admiration in her eyes. "You are remarkable, human. I did not expect you to manage this so well." Ethan smiled, focusing on the battlefield. "Humans survive by thinking. And we never give up. That can be powerful when combined with your strength." The enemy fleet began to falter. Their formations broke apart and their ships were damaged or destroyed. Ethan coordinated a final strike, using the remaining energy barriers and traps to corner the enemy. With Lyra leading a direct assault, they forced the remaining ships to surrender. Silence returned to space around the castle. The battle was over. Ethan and Lyra floated above the battlefield, observing the remnants of the defeated fleet. "You were right," Lyra said softly. "Thinking differently can be stronger than pure power. Humans, you are extraordinary." Ethan shook his head. "We are not perfect, but we survive. We adapt, and sometimes that is enough to succeed." Lyra looked at him with intensity. "You have changed my perspective, Ethan Clarke. I have relied on fear for centuries, but now I see that strength can come from trust, courage, and partnership. That is new." "That is powerful," Ethan smiled. "And it is real. Humans have always known that even small beings can do great things. Sometimes the most unlikely allies can change the outcome of battles." Lyra's expression softened further. "You are not just brave. You are wise, patient, and kind. You have a heart that sees beyond appearances. That is rare and beautiful." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. "I only speak what I see, and what I see is someone who is strong, intelligent, and capable of great care." "You are not just terrifying, Lyra. You are magnificent." Lyra blinked, slightly surprised. "Magnificent? No one has ever said that to me, not in centuries." "You deserve to hear it," Ethan said simply. "Not for your power, not for your fangs, not for your eyes, but for you. For who you truly are." Lyra looked at him, her red eyes glowing softly. For the first time, she felt something she had not felt in centuries. Seen, truly seen. Not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as a being with strength, heart, and beauty. "Ethan Clarke," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. "I trust you. I have never trusted anyone like this, and yet I do now." Ethan smiled gently. "And I trust you, Lyra. Trust is more powerful than fear. It allows us to face challenges that seem impossible. And together, we can face anything." They spent the following days rebuilding the castle's defenses, repairing damaged ships, and strengthening the people's morale. Ethan continued to teach new strategies, showing how small, clever tactics could overcome great power. Lyra observed, learned, and adapted. The people of the castle, once fearful and isolated, began to see a new future, one where fear did not control them, but courage, strategy, and partnership did. Over time, the bond between Ethan and Lyra grew stronger. They shared quiet moments, discussing the stars, the galaxy, and their hopes for the future. Lyra spoke of centuries of loneliness, of ruling through fear, and Ethan listened with patience and understanding. He shared stories of Earth, of humans facing impossible odds and finding hope in the darkest moments. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the repaired city of the castle, Lyra turned to Ethan. "I never thought I would see this, human. I never thought I would feel hope like this again, and yet, here I am because of you." Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and sincere. "Hope is always possible, Lyra. It only takes courage to see it and trust to follow it." She nodded slowly. "Then we will face the galaxy together. Humans and my people, united, strong, and free." Ethan smiled. "Yes, together we can achieve things that no one alone could, and perhaps change the galaxy for the better." For the first time in centuries, Lyra smiled fully, not hiding behind fear or anger. She felt beautiful, not just in appearance, but in spirit. And she knew that with Ethan by her side, she could face any challenge. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but they had already proven that even a single human and a vampire queen could change the course of battles, inspire loyalty, and forge trust across species. Ethan placed a hand lightly on her arm. "The galaxy will see that humans are not weak. That courage, intelligence, and trust can overcome even the greatest threats, and that sometimes the smallest beings can make the biggest difference. Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing softly. And they will see that even beings like me can change, can learn, and can care, all because one human showed me a different path. Together, they looked up at the stars. The distant suns shone brightly, and the castle's lights reflected softly on the planet below. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, but it held promise. The galaxy was dangerous, yes, but it was also full of possibilities. And in that moment, Ethan and Lyra understood something simple, yet profound. Courage, trust, and partnership were stronger than fear. They were stronger than power alone. And when beings of different worlds came together, they could accomplish the impossible. For Ethan Clarke, the human explorer, and Lyra, the vampire queen, this was only the beginning. Together, they would face new challenges, protect their people, and show the galaxy that humanity was a force to be respected, not for fear or destruction, but for courage, intelligence, and the heart to see beauty where others only saw terror. The story of a human and a vampire queen, of trust and courage, of hope and partnership, had reached a new chapter, and the galaxy would never be the same again.